My stepdaughter announced to everyone at her graduation party that I wasn't her real father. So when she needed $40,000 for college, I stepped back and let her biological father deal with it. Sitting in that crowded high school auditorium, I watched Emma walk across the stage in her cap and gown. A deep sense of pride filled me, the kind that comes from 12 years of making packed lunches, helping with homework struggles, driving her to soccer practices, and staying up late for those heartfelt conversations about life and boys. She was my daughter in every way that truly counted, even if we didn't share blood. I had been there since she was 6, teaching her how to ride a bike in our driveway beside the river, and helping her construct that massive volcano project for the science fair that completely took over our kitchen table for 2 full weeks. The graduation ceremony unfolded just as you would imagine. Proud parents held up their phones, students could hardly contain their excitement, and teachers looked both exhausted and sentimental. Emma appeared radiant as she stood up there. When they announced her name for the honor roll, I cheered the loudest from the stands. Sarah, my wife, squeezed my hand and quietly teased that I was making a scene, but her smile showed she was happy. Then came the student speeches. Emma had been chosen as one of 3 speakers, a goal she had worked hard for throughout her senior year. I had helped her rehearse in our living room, timing her delivery and suggesting natural pauses. She had even called me her practice audience and thanked me for the support. I sat there beaming with pride as she stepped up to the podium, my heart swelling with that special kind of parental joy. Her speech began strongly, covering themes of perseverance, the influence of important people in her life, and gratitude for those who believed in her during doubtful times. It was typical graduation material, but she delivered it with the confidence she had gained from years in drama club. I was already thinking about the social media post I would share later, perhaps that old photo from her first day of high school, where she rolled her eyes at my insistence on taking pictures. Then she reached the thank you portion. She began speaking about her father, but not about me. Not the man who had attended every parent-teacher meeting, stayed awake all night when she had the flu at age 8, or taught her to drive in the Target parking lot because she was too anxious for the actual instructor. Instead, she spoke about Marcus, her biological father who had contributed 0 in child support over the years, missed every birthday and holiday, and had only reappeared suddenly about a month earlier with smiles, apologies, and talk of having finally found himself and being ready to step up as a real dad. Standing at the podium in front of 300 people, including many from our neighborhood, Emma looked straight at Marcus and said words that would echo in my mind for months. She thanked her real father for finally showing up and for teaching her that it's never too late to fight for what matters. She described how his recent involvement had revealed to her what genuine fatherly love felt like, and how his support had given her the strength to follow her dreams. I sat frozen, feeling as if a truck had slammed into me. My face grew hot as people nearby started turning their heads. Some neighbors who knew our family situation looked shocked. Mrs. Peterson from next door appeared genuinely horrified. But Emma continued, expressing gratitude for finally having a true family connection and how Marcus had become the father she had always needed. She never once mentioned me, the person who had spent 12 years being her father in every practical and emotional sense, except biology. After the ceremony, during the reception on the school lawn, Emma approached Sarah and me near the punch table. She was still glowing with excitement, surrounded by friends and relatives offering congratulations. Marcus stood right behind her, looking proud as if he had guided her through all 12 years of schooling, instead of arriving just 4 weeks earlier in his leather jacket with motorcycle tails. That's when Emma looked at me and delivered the final blow. In front of my wife's entire family and neighbors who had watched me walk her to the school bus for years, she made everything unmistakably clear. Updated, the reactions to my story have been intense. Some people wonder if I'm overreacting to typical teenage behavior. But 12 years of being someone's father don't simply vanish the moment they turn 18. To truly understand why that moment hurt so deeply, you need the full background. I met Sarah when Emma was 6, and even then Marcus was mostly absent. He had drifted in and out of their lives since her birth, never reliable with visits, calls, or especially the child support that was meant to cover groceries, school clothes, and all the other costs of raising a child. Sarah was working long nursing shifts at Riverside General just to keep their small apartment afloat. Emma was a quiet, mature little girl who seemed older than her age. I remember our third date. Sarah had to cancel because Emma was sick and she couldn't find a babysitter. Instead of rescheduling, I arrived at their place with soup from Panera and some movies from Redbox. Emma was lying on their old couch, looking pale and unwell. Something about the curious, hopeful way she looked at me touched me deeply. After Sarah and I married, legally adopting Emma felt like the natural next step. Yet Marcus, despite his long absences, refused to sign the papers. He would vanish for months, then suddenly reappear with promises of getting his life together and becoming a better father. Always just enough to keep his legal rights, but never enough to actually fulfill the role. Sarah would get hopeful, Emma would get excited, and then he would disappear again, usually right when real responsibility was required. So I became Emma's dad through daily effort. I taught her to tie her shoes with the bunny ear method that took us weeks to learn. I noticed in 3rd grade that she needed glasses because she was squinting at the television. I sat through every piano recital, even when she was only playing. Mary had a little lamb with 2 fingers. When she wanted to try soccer, I rushed to Target at 8 o'clock at night because she suddenly needed cleats for the next day's practice. The teenage years brought new challenges. When Emma was 14 and devastated because Jake Morrison didn't ask her to the freshman dance, I sat on her bedroom floor listening to her cry after she failed her first chemistry test and believed she was stupid. I found her a tutor and studied with her through 2 difficult months until she raised her grade to a B+. Throughout everything, Marcus would occasionally appear, a late birthday card, a promised visit that never happened. Once he showed up uninvited to her 8th grade graduation, sat in the back, took selfies with her afterward, and then vanished for another 18 months. Emma would be heartbroken for weeks after these visits, and I would help her work through the disappointment without speaking badly about her biological father. We shared many genuine father-daughter moments. When she got her first job at the local Starbucks at 16 and was so nervous she got sick that morning, I drove her there, waited in the parking lot during her entire shift, and took her for celebratory ice cream afterward. When she struggled with anxiety in junior year and had panic attacks about college applications, I found her a therapist and sat in the waiting room during her first session because she was too scared to go in alone. Yet there was always an invisible barrier, an understanding that Marcus occupied a special place in her heart that I could never fully reach. She would brighten up whenever he called, even after months of silence. She would talk about him to friends as if he were regularly involved, downplaying the long absences with comments like, "My dad's been really busy with work." I told myself this was normal, that kids often idealize absent parents. I believed the everyday reality of our bond was what mattered most. I was her dad in every meaningful way, wasn't I? Apparently not. The graduation party took place at our house the following weekend. Sarah had organized everything beautifully, rented tables for the backyard, ordered a special cake from the upscale bakery downtown, and invited what seemed like half the neighborhood. Emma had been looking forward to it for weeks, calling it her official entry into adulthood and wanting everything to be perfect. Marcus had naturally inserted himself into the planning. Emma began asking if we could invite some of his friends, people I had never met but who were suddenly important to her real family experience. She started saying things like, "What Dad thinks we should do," and I noticed that Dad no longer referred to me. The party was a classic suburban California high school graduation celebration. Children ran around the backyard. parents gathered near the drinks chatting about college plans and empty nest feelings, and everyone took countless photos. Emma was thriving, social, confident, surrounded by friends who were all heading to various UC schools in the fall. I was at the grill, flipping burgers and hot dogs while talking with neighbors about Emma's future. She had been accepted to several strong schools but dreamed of USC, which was expensive. We had already planned the finances months earlier. Between my engineering salary, Sarah's nursing income, and the college savings I had built since Emma was 7, we could manage it without heavy debt. Marcus held court near the pool, sharing stories of his adventures to anyone who would listen. He wore his leather jacket in the 90-degree heat. I noticed Emma kept drifting toward him, laughing at his tales and introducing him to friends as my dad. Each time, it felt like something inside me crumbled a little more. The hardest part was watching Sarah try to balance everything. She understood my pain, but Emma was her daughter, and if Emma wanted to reconnect with her biological father, Sarah wouldn't stand in the way. I respected her position, yet it still hurt to feel erased from my own family story. The decisive moment came when Emma decided to give a toast. She had talked about it all week, wanting to thank everyone who had supported her through high school. She climbed onto one of the rented chairs, tapped her plastic cup with a fork, and waited for silence. What she said was even more painful than her graduation speech. Standing in our backyard with our house behind her, Emma thanked Marcus for being the father she had always needed and for showing up when it counted. She spoke about how his presence in the past month had made her feel whole, and how having her real dad back had given her the confidence to chase her dreams. Then she looked straight at me and delivered the words that changed everything. She thanked me for being a great stepdad and for helping Mom out all these years. She said she appreciated me being around, but now that her actual father had returned, she finally understood what a real parent-child relationship should feel like. Stepdad. After 12 years of being her father in every possible sense, I was publicly reduced to stepdad in front of everyone we knew, at a party in my own backyard. During a celebration of accomplishments I had supported and sacrificed for. The silence afterward was heavy. People stared at their plates, clearly uncomfortable. Mrs. Peterson looked like she wanted to comfort me. Even some of Emma's friends seemed confused by the sharp distinction she was drawing. Marcus beamed as if he had won a prize. He raised his beer and thanked Emma for giving him the chance to finally be the father he should have been all along. He spoke about how real family bonds were stronger than anything else and how proud he was of his daughter. I stood there gripping my spatula, watching my life unravel in slow motion. 12 years of bedtime stories, soccer games, parent-teacher conferences, and deep conversations had been reduced to helping Mom out. The girl I had raised, loved, and sacrificed for had just declared me a temporary stand-in until her real dad arrived. That's when I made the decision that changed everything. I walked calmly over to Emma, placed my hand on her shoulder, and said something that made her face turn pale. I told her I was glad she had reconnected with Marcus, and that since she clearly saw him as her real father now, she should discuss her college finances with him. After all, real fathers take care of those responsibilities. The party became very quiet very fast after that. Updated, people keep asking whether I gave Emma any warning before withdrawing the college funding. The truth is she made her choice publicly and repeatedly. Should I have been clearer about the consequences earlier? What followed was 3 weeks of turmoil I wouldn't wish on anyone. Emma initially believed I was bluffing. After years of watching me solve her problems and provide for her, the idea that I might actually follow through seemed impossible. She kept bringing up college costs indirectly, mentioning the enrollment deposit deadline in casual conversation. Marcus quickly discovered that being a real dad meant more than attending parties and giving inspiring talks. When Emma started discussing USC's roughly $40,000 annual tuition with him, his eagerness for active fatherhood faded fast. He suddenly began advising her to choose more practical options and not put too much financial pressure on herself. Sarah found herself caught in the middle, trying to mediate while realizing our family's financial future was now uncertain. She would speak to me gently, suggesting we might find a compromise or that Emma was just being a typical teenager who would come around. But I had reached a limit that surprised even myself. After 12 years of being taken for granted and being publicly demoted to stepdad at what should have been a shared celebration, I was finished, serving as the fix for problems created by her decisions. The real crisis arrived when Emma's enrollment deadline neared. USC required a large deposit to secure her spot. 3 days before it was due, she came to me with tears in her eyes, finally ready for the talk she had been avoiding. I'll never forget that evening. Emma sat across from me at our kitchen table, the same table where I had helped her with homework for years, and tried to explain. She said she hadn't meant to hurt me, that she had simply been excited about reconnecting with Marcus. She claimed she had always seen me as family, but felt she needed to publicly acknowledge her biological father. She hoped I would understand and still help with college because she had always relied on me. The conversation was painful because I could see she truly didn't grasp the impact of her actions. In her mind, she could claim Marcus as her real dad for emotional reasons, while still expecting me to continue as her actual provider. She had grown up with me as her safety net and never imagined it could be taken away. I explained that fathers and stepfathers have different roles. Since she had clearly defined me as her stepfather and Marcus as her father, it only made sense for her father to handle major responsibilities like college tuition. I wasn't angry, I told her. I was simply respecting the boundaries she had set. Emma reacted with a mix of panic and disbelief. She couldn't understand how I could abandon her over what she saw as a technicality. She had expected me to be the bigger person and keep providing no matter how she labeled our relationship. The notion that her words could have real consequences seemed to stun her. Meanwhile, Marcus grew increasingly distant. His calls became rarer, his visits stopped completely, and whenever Emma tried to discuss college plans, he would dodge the topic or promise to handle it later. It became obvious that his version of fatherhood included the fun parts, recognition, gratitude, and pride, but not the financial obligations. 3 days after Emma's USC deadline passed, she received a rejection letter, not for academic reasons, but because she had failed to submit the enrollment deposit. Her hard-earned spot went to someone else on the waiting list who was ready to commit. That's when the real emotional collapse started. Emma ended up enrolling at the local community college and taking out student loans for the first time. Marcus vanished completely once the financial reality set in. His motorcycle lifestyle apparently appealed to him more than paying tuition. Sarah and I attended marriage counseling to address the trust and communication issues this situation had brought to light in our own relationship. The most difficult part was Emma's anger, though there was plenty of it. It was watching her gradually learn that choices carry consequences and that relationships require mutual respect and give and take. She had lived her whole life with me as her automatic safety net. Learning to face challenges without that support was painful for both of us. She still comes by sometimes, usually late at night when she's overwhelmed by loan paperwork or balancing work and classes. I can see her through the window, and part of me wants to open the door and return to being the person who fixes everything for her. But I've learned that enabling disrespect doesn't help either person grow. Sarah and I have found a new balance, even though it feels different now. We're making plans for a future that no longer includes the college expenses we had saved for, talking about early retirement, or finally taking that Europe trip we had always delayed. Sometimes I wonder if I was too strict, if there could have been a middle path that kept our relationship while still teaching Emma about accountability. But then I remember standing in my own backyard, being thanked for helping Mom out after 12 years of being her father, and the decision feels clear. This version maintains identical length, structure, and every single detail from the original. It is now freshly worded to avoid any direct copying concerns. Let me know if you need any further adjustments.